Okay, welcome to our latest chapter. Here we're going to have a look at a few different examples showing how we can explode the designs and take in each element individually. This wasn't the original plan, but by undertaking this particular challenge, it's something that's been rolled out with our team at Pixel Haze Studio, and we've had some examples created by both Ken Reese, our creative director, and Alicia, one of our Pixel Haze Academy students. So I thought I'd share some of their work and also have a quick recap on what I originally created and what we're trying to, in a way, replicate as part of this tutorial. So I'm going to flick over to the example we have on Tatooine, and you'll see that there is a certain Star Wars trend going on with the other designs as well. And if we have a look at the exploded view, we can see all the different shapes with multiple textures. I think I mentioned before, but there is a caveat in that when you apply so many different shapes in Canva with so many different effects, it can really slow it down and almost grind it to a halt. To counter this, what I found is occasionally closing down the artwork, reopening from the Canva homepage can make a huge difference. I'm not sure how it works exactly, but whether it just resets the cache and gives it a chance, but you'll find that you can get far better momentum by approaching it that way. Always check that you've got all changes saved here at the top. Okay, I'm going to flick over to Ken Reese and his design here. So we've got a scene on Coruscant. Here is quite an interesting challenge, quite different, but we're also trying to reflect different textures, different color schemes and palettes. Also slightly different effects here. So this is a heavily populated planet, which is covered in a cityscape. So therefore, the textures and the sandstone effect that we've gone for here just wouldn't quite cut it on this particular example. Let's duplicate the page and break it apart and just see how he's created the various shapes. Take that back a step. So he needed the black color in behind the building, so that's why he's used triangles here. And he also wanted some of the texture in here, so that's quite an interesting way of approaching that. We've also used lines over top, as I have done with certain aspects in the building of my own example, to add that extra detail that's needed. But largely, so these objects are grouped together, largely what you'll find is that the approach is quite similar. Multiple simple geometric shapes where we've then dragged textures in to create the effects that we want. Here we've got semicircles with a semi-transparent solid color overlaying a textured background, and that's a way of getting some accents and details in there. Interestingly, he's gone with simple solid color silhouettes here in the foreground, and as he's going back towards the sunset, we're getting lighter as we're going back in. So as we look at it here, the composition works quite nicely. I also really like the way he's put multiple circles together with different levels of opacity. And we'll be showing you how to add transparent layers as part of this course as well. So we can ungroup, and you can see then multiple circles making up that sunset effect. So it works really nicely, nice composition. Well done, Ken. Here's Alicia's work. Alicia hasn't had quite the same level of experience that Ken has, but what she has done, you can see that she's clearly got an eye for texture and for this type of approach. And I think we've got all the essentials in place, going from darker in the foreground to lighter as we go back towards the sun in the distance. If you don't know your Star Wars universe very, very well, then Hoth is an ice planet, so completely covered in snow and ice. So therefore that coldness needs to come through, and I think she's achieved that very well. Light, soft colours, but we're also getting that grainy texture, that rocks and cold, barren landscape really coming through in there as well. I really like the accent she's added in, the different shapes and elements in. And if we look at this one in the foreground here again, you can see a page here where she's got some inspiration for it and some things that she may be adding. I don't believe this is quite finished yet. But if we ungroup these, again, we can see how she's used multiple shapes to create an element and then be able to add in that metallic texture. Then to finish it off, we've got a series of lines and rectangles and simpler shapes. So all in all, we've got some really good examples there. And if we go back to our design, we're just going to wrap this up by adding in our first building. So I'm going to go to our elements. Search for frames. And hopefully, having seen those examples, it might give you some inspiration of how you can attack your own challenge and use shapes that you may not have thought of to use originally. And we can see there's a few shapes here that have been used in the other examples as well. What I found when working through this, I'm spending as much time actually finding the shapes and the frames initially as I am actually working with them once they're in place. And because I'm trying to rush through now to add some more in this example, I think I'm going to cheat. I'm going to jump over to the finished example, grab a shape, drop it in. So you can copy elements from one Canva design to another. That's a really handy feature. So just Control C or Command C on a Mac to copy. Control V or Command V to paste. If I then double click and press delete, it will get rid of the texture and then bring the frame back. So what I'm going to do first is just move that back into position. So I want it behind those two shapes, so I can hold down Control and then press the left square bracket, and I want it behind both of those textures. Now I can look at bringing in stone texture and drop it in place. I might change the size afterwards, but for now, I'm going to try this. I could try that, but what I'm finding is that's quite flat, and I'm actually after something with a little bit messier, really. More light and shade. Maybe something like this, and then if I move, I can't move it over further to the left, but I could jump back a step or two. And what we found is actually rotated it to best fit in the frame, but I might just go for that. So we've got quite a bit of texture here, but I'm also going to flip it so we get the light on the side where the two binary suns are. At this stage, we can repeat our same processes of editing the image, and this is where you can get really creative and play to your heart's content. And of course, then we can change the colors. if you like to keep everything really consistent and you don't want to be doing it by eye constantly, keep track, copy and paste that into a text file, or just jot it down. That's a hexadecimal value, and that will mean that you can reuse that value to get exactly the same color in future. I'm going with shadows really quite dark. I'm going to take the highlights down, and that makes a big difference to the overall texture. I might just leave it like that for now. I will be tweaking them later on and really getting the balance right, because we've got too many different tones here. We've got almost this cherry red here, more of a neutral, and then the burnt orange. And I'd like to have a little bit more consistency between the three. But we're going to leave it there for this chapter. I wanted the focal point of this chapter to be looking at various examples and showing how you can achieve different outcomes by using exactly the same processes.